What up? I'm Josh Paulison, and welcome to Your Story Now. Today we are going to be looking at reverse engineering stories. Reverse engineering is where you see what something is, and then you try to figure out how it was made. And actually I have a whole podcast about this, which I will include a link to in the description. We are going to be looking at the power of words, and I'm also going to include a link to this video in the description. It's short, less than 2 minutes, really great, love it. So we have several questions that we can ask to help us with reverse engineering, and there's more, but we're going to focus on these for now. So the first question is, why did they do that? In this context, we mean, why did the creators do what they did? So we have a few things that we can look at here. We can say, why did blank do blank? Why did the creators make most of the video have no dialogue? Now, you can make a few arguments for this. You can make different thoughts. And the thing with reverse engineering stories is unless we have direct words from the creators, we cannot truly know why they did what they did. But we can figure out what the thought process could have been and then apply that to our own works to get similar results. So why did they have most of the video have no dialogue? Here's one thought that I have. The dialogue itself held more punch. So having less dialogue means that when you have it, suddenly its presence is more powerful. Or we could say, why did the creators make it so short? Well, it's done pretty well. It's got, 27 million views? So the length doesn't seem to be an issue for it whatsoever, and I don't think that longer equals better or more compelling at all. But why did they make it so short? Well, I would say they only had a little to tell. I mean, there's also other benefits as well, like people are more willing to watch the whole thing because it's a smaller commitment. So there's a few different benefits. You could also say they didn't need more to tell their story. They didn't have fluff. There are a lot of different reasons that this could be. We could ask, additionally, why did the creators use the shots they did? Yes, they established what was going on, but it's interesting because they really didn't expand the world very much. It was focused around that corner, but it was very effective and it was plenty. So why did they use the shots that they did? Because of the focus of the story. Because that way we didn't start thinking about all of those irrelevant details. It could be very tempting to say, well, you know what, we need to show this and this, or we could, but they focused in on the story by having it be pretty minimal and not by feeling the need to have all of these extra pieces showing this big, broad world. They did have some establishing shots, but that didn't take from the story. That just demonstrated the area and people's general reaction to the blind man in the story. So asking why did they do that can help us reverse engineer the story. Now, why are these helpful? What makes these helpful? Well, we can look at our own stories and say, you know what? Maybe I like to have dialogue, and I feel like I always need to have dialogue, open with dialogue, so on and so forth. But if you don't have as much dialogue, the dialogue holds power. It's kind of like when you pause in a speech, which maybe you've noticed I don't do that much. But the pauses then have more power. Why did they make it so short? They only had a little to tell. It had a lot of punch, but it was a little. And so that can tell you to make a powerful story, I don't have to have a lot of content. Just have to have a lot of meaning behind the content. So you can say, okay, I'm going to aim in my stories to make them meaningful but short. I'm not going to worry about length to create meaning. If you're trying to target a certain demographic, you might say, well, okay, I'm going to make them shorter so that people might be more willing to watch it. You could look at it and say, well, I don't need to add more to tell my story. Ignoring fluff. Basically what this does is that it gives you some guidelines to say, okay, why did they do this? From what I can see, here are some reasons that they could have, and these are reasons for me to try the similar approach in my stories in the future. Or I'm going to say reduce the dialogue in my story because I want more emphasis on it, because I like how their approach worked for them, and I'm going to try to apply that for myself. Now, you can make different arguments like, well, are people more willing to watch shorter videos? How can you prove that? What if there's cases where they would rather have longer videos? So, of course, if there's data that contradicts it, then you can look at that. But there's also cases where both are true. Like, people generally want longer experience in a theater than they would expect from a YouTube video. So context and target market matters. Consider, for the context of the creators, why they did what they did. And this will help you create stories. And if you really like those stories, it might not be a bad idea to look at working in that context yourself anyway. So one great question for reverse engineering stories is, why did they do that?